The Minnesota Vikings look to stay undefeated against the very familiar NFC North foe, and the Kansas City Chiefs are looking to continue their unbeaten streak in a Super Bowl rematch. We have so much for you here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show.
It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Every team, every game, every angle. The local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network going head-to-head on every matchup. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Unprecedented insight, unrivaled passion, and unsurpassed knowledge. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. The Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Week 7 of the NFL is here, and we've got everything you need to know heading into the weekend from the local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher, and from the primetime game of Ravens and Buccaneers on Monday night to the big 4 o'clock matchup with the Chiefs and the 49ers to the 1 p.m. games with the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. We're going to go game by game to make you the most informed fan for game day. So we're going to talk about so many of these incredible week 7 matchups. Crazy to think that we're already a month and a half in the NFL season, 1/3 of the way done with the regular season. But we're going to start off with the London game, the New England Patriots and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not necessarily the most exciting matchup on paper, but two teams looking to pick up a win with the Patriots, and they started Drake May last week. The Jaguars, a pretty embarrassing effort against the Chicago Bears in London. They'll look to atone for that. You got Mike Debate of Locked On Patriots and Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars taking you through everything you need to know.
I'll make some nice keys to victory for you guys, Mike, since you are a part of the visitors. Well, you are the part of the visitors. Go ahead and let me know what your keys to victory are for the New England Patriots.
Well, if the Patriots are going to be able to pull out this victory, and I think it's going to be a tough one for the Patriots because, like you said, Tony, right now the Jacksonville Jaguars' strengths do play well into the Patriots' weaknesses. So in order for the Patriots to be able to flip the script, so to speak, and be able to take it to the Jacksonville Jaguars, I think they're going to have to exploit the one area that I think they may be able to find some success, and that's at the slot receiver position. Jaguars have been a little hesitant, I guess is the best way for me to put it, in being able to defend slot receivers, and the Patriots have a very good one in Demario Douglas. This was a budding relationship that we saw last week between Drake May and Demario Douglas, where Demario received 92 yards and was their top receiver. I think he's going to try to go to him as much as possible in order to find some success. Now, if Jacksonville is smart and they're savvy, they're going to try to shut Demario off. The Patriots still have someone like a Kendrick Bourne, who is a creature of the slot. He can definitely be someone that can win his battles on the perimeter, but he has been an effective slot weapon before as well. I look for him to be a potential safety blanket if the Jaguars do zero in on Demario and try to take him away from Drake on Sunday. And then in the red zone, you have to try to find Hunter Henry, get him involved. He's a very big weapon in this passing game. That's where the Patriots are going to have to be able to make things happen. So if the Pats are going to find success in the passing game, that's going to be the key. They've got to go to the slot, and I think that's something that they'll try to do. On defense, I look for the Patriots at this point to try to contain Jacksonville's running game, which has been very good with Travis Etienne. But at this point, if the Patriots are going to have success, they need to try to stop those big chunk runs that are putting this team on its heels and are allowing them, or disallowing them, I should say, in better terminology, to play from any type of a position of strength. Teams that have been able to beat the Patriots soundly put them on their heels early, and they put them behind early. If the Patriots get down 2 touchdowns, this is not a team that's equipped to be able to come from behind. So that's a key to victory. They have to be able to contain Jacksonville's running game. And then last, and really, I think maybe most importantly, is the Patriots have to stop shooting themselves in the foot with bad penalties. 2 weeks in a row now, Tony, this team has committed 12 penalties and then 9 penalties last week against the Houston Texans. You can't allow teams to give themselves opportunities to beat you when you're right now struggling for every yard, for every opportunity. That's something that needs to be done. And then, of course, an honorable mention in this case, Patriots need to be much better on 3rd down than they've been. 3 of 13 last week against the Houston Texans, not going to get the job done. Those are my keys to victory for the New England Patriots this week.
That's a whole lot, but that's all right. That's what it takes sometimes when you don't win a whole bunch, and we know about that here. By the way, Demario Douglas is a Jacksonville native, Demario Douglas. So, yeah, we love us some Demario Douglas. All right, for the Jags, keys to victory. We talked about third down. Get off the field on third down on defense. Keep them on the field on third down when you're on offense. Those are the keys. Turnovers, penalties. We know those things plague bad teams. Specifically, I think the Jaguars have to have certain guys get on track. When they won a game this year, all of their go-to players or the players that are expecting a lot, that is, Trevor Lawrence had maybe his best statistical year of his career against the Colts. Trayvon Walker, 3 sacks, like I said, caused a forced fumble, caused another sack when the quarterback was running from him and he ran into Josh Allen. And then he had 2 more sacks where the guy barely got away from him. And he drew some holding penalties. He had Laramie Tunsil early this year. He was begging for his life. Laramie had 3 or 4 penalties holding on to Trayvon, and that's a good sign when you have that. So that's something for you to lead with. Tank Bigsby had the best game of his career against the Colts. Brian Thomas Jr. had a coming out party where he caught a touchdown, and he run faster than anybody else all season at over 22 miles per hour. And they won by 3. They were up, and then all of a sudden the game was tied at 34 with like a minute to go. See, so that's the Jaguars. Everything has to go right. And the more that goes right, the better chance it gives you to win. I think they're going to win, debate. I do believe, even though they lost to a rookie last week, I think this is a little bit different. I think they're still breaking in Drake May. He's still getting used to the NFL game. Things are still fast for him. And because the offensive line, and this is the main key, because the offensive line is struggling and Ramondre Stevenson isn't healthy, I'm going to go with the Jaguars in a close 23-20 game.
Yeah, I think at this point, I'm in agreement with you, Wig. I think that the New England Patriots right now, because of either the loss or the marginally disrupted game that Ramondre Stevenson will give you, and right now, I mean, it's looking very unlikely that he'll be able to suit up for this game. That could change, but it's looking unlikely. That's a lot to put on a young quarterback's shoulders. I think Drake May will find a way to move the ball. I think the Patriots will have some success, but ultimately, like you said, Jacksonville's strengths play very well for them into the hands of New England's weaknesses, and I think it's going to be a little bit too much. I actually have the Jags winning this one 24-20 over the Patriots. So, yeah, I think we're like-minded and very similar final scores here.
Mike is great. Tony is great. And for more on those two, check them out over at Locked On Patriots and at Locked On Jaguars, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now to the 1 p.m. games. The big matchup here is the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. The Lions traveling to Minnesota, where the Vikings have put together an impressive undefeated streak this season with Sam Darnold at the helm. But the Lions are looking to play spoiler is an NFC North foe. So you have Matt Derry of Locked On Lions, Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, and they'll take you through what you need to know about the game, key matchup, storylines, and so much more.
Do you agree with me? Is this game is for the 1 seed in the NFC? Yeah.
Well, we're going to find out with the Niners.
Who's going to take it? Kirk Cousins?
Sure.
Who's going to take it? The 49ers are 3-3. This is the 1 seed, baby.
I mean, it's wild. It really is. You know, Niners and Chiefs, I know, are going to get all the Fox love this week, but you're right. This is, to me, the best game on the card. And these teams are playing great football, and there's the chess match that's going to go on, and they're both physical. I'm excited for Sunday. I can't wait.
So in this, it's so weird in this NFC North. It's the best division in football right now.
Crazy.
They 4 teams have 4 or more wins through the first 6 weeks. That hasn't happened since like the 50s or something. They all 4 teams lead the league in point differential. That hasn't happened since before World War II. Crazy. And it's a bummer that only one of these teams gets to play at home in Wild Card Weekend. And probably somebody in this division is going to fall off. Maybe that's the Vikings, maybe it's the Bears. But somebody is going to fall off probably, right? Like all of these teams going, 5, 6, 7 seed is pretty unlikely. You had teams like the Seahawks and teams like a spicy Cardinals kind of that, maybe can go take this. But what do you think this thing comes down to? I have my answer. I talked a little bit about it yesterday on Locked On Vikings, but I want to hear yours first.
This game, I think this game,
like X factor. Like if Lions do X, they win.
I really believe that the Lions have got to just pound, and this is simple, and it's maybe very cliche, but it's got to be that Dan Campbell football. It's got to be the Ragnows, the Sewells, the Deckers. Zeitler's been good, and Glasgow. That group of 5 with Skipper as that 6th sort of
ridiculous that line is.
Just smashes people. The talk is Darnold, the talk is JJ, all this stuff. Aaron Jones, will he play? All these things. By the way, is Hawkinson coming back this week or no?
If I had to guess, I would guess yes, but I would be not. I would be making an educated guess. That is the goal. The goal was for him to be back basically after the bye. If he misses it, the way they've like approached this and talked about it, he actually would probably play in the short week after it. Like it's that close.
Gotcha.
So probably, and if he misses it by like a day.
But regardless of all of that, if they're pounding the football, they're running Montgomery, they're running Gibbs, and they're keeping the Vikings off the field, and then they get into the red zone and then they pound it in. That's the key. To me, it's got to be what they've been doing the last few weeks. Montgomery has been amazing. He's been fantastic. So much so that they gave him a 2-year extension last week. So that's it. To me, it's that simple. I think the Lions can throw on Minnesota. They've gotten in a good rhythm, but I think they want to start off with establishing the run, getting first downs on the ground, taking the crowd out of it, and playing that bully ball that helped them win 12 games last year. What have you been saying?
Yeah, and the Vikings want it. Like this is the way every Vikings game has gone, all 5 of them. They have been up by 2 or 3 scores at the end of the first quarter.
Yeah, right out of the game.
And the only team to score on them in the first quarter, if I recall, was the Giants, who scored a field goal on their opening possession, and that's the only time the Vikings have trailed all year. All year was the opening possession of, and that was because the Vikings fumbled in their own red zone. They have been off to as hot a starts as you could conjure, and it's taken the run game out of it. So the Lions either have to prevent that from happening and come out to a hot start themselves, or they have to be willing to commit to the run down 3 scores in the second quarter, which I wouldn't put past Dan Campbell, and I don't think is that bad of an idea, but it's hard. It's hard to not feel that thing slipping away from you and want to go chase it. But for me, it is figuring out the pass rush plan against the Vikings is going to be what this comes down to with no Hutchinson. So what do they want to do? They want to just funnel this through, a practice squad call up and say, hey, we're going to get you a whole bunch of one-on-ones. Good luck. Do they want to, they've been doing that against a tackle all year long, the Lions have, because it's been Aiden Hutchinson. Do they want to say, hey, maybe Alan McNeil versus Ed Ingram? We want that to be the matchup. And we'll have everybody else do dirty work, and we're going to make things come down to that matchup. Whatever works there for the first 2 drives of the Vikings on offense, if the Lions get a ton of pressure, it's going to come down to how the Vikings adjust there. But that might also cause the hot start that the Lions are looking for. And if Sam Darnold has forever back there, it's going to come down to, can the Lions come up with a better plan on the fly? But by then, have the Vikings gone up 14-0 like they do every single time? I think it really comes down to that. Can the Lions solve their problem right now? They're coming with the plan the Vikings haven't seen. Right. And this is the only game where that's going to be true, where you're not going to know what the Lions are going to try to do without Hutchinson. If that works, it's going to be somebody adjusting on the fly, and it's going to come down to whether or not they can do that.
I think it's a great point you bring up. By the way, when it was 28-0 Minnesota at Lambeau, just the thought of you suplexing Peter Bukowski was just fantastic. Lion fans love that as well. I had to throw that in.
They came up short. The Packers in that game, the Packers fans and Bukowski, they won't want to acknowledge this, but in that game, the Packers never had the ball with a chance to take the lead. It ended 31-29. They kind of backdoored it, but they backdoor covered all your halftime live bets on FanDuel. But it wasn't it was not a sweat really. And if you look at the win probability, that will show that as well. It never dipped below 80.
It's crazy. I'm excited, Luke. This is going to be fun, man. Both games are going to be great this year, and happy for you that you got something to talk about here. This is fun. This is good. And the division is nuts. Can you believe this?
Division is nuts.
Crazy.
I feel like the Vikings and Lions are the realest teams on all of this, and I hope for our sake that the Bears and the Packers are the ones that fall off. But it's just the way the NFL goes. The way it starts is never the way it ends. There's just people are going to present different challenges to you and all that. But this one just feels so huge, especially because the season ends in Ford Field for the Vikings. The season ends with that. And if this keeps up, if these two teams keep trading blows from afar like this, division might come down to that one, and that means that the result of this one is going to really make a difference.
No question.
So yeah, this has immense playoff implications in mid-October. Love to see it.
Me too. All right, brother.
For Vikings Lions game. Like usually we got Tom Brenneman trying to like in blowout mode by the fourth quarter. Like
I don't even know. Who do we have for this game? Is this a
I can look it up, but it's probably
I think it's Adam Amin and Olsen, is it not?
It is Greg Olsen. Yeah.
That'll be good. That'll be good.
Yeah. That's like the noon game A team, right?
Yeah, well, Joe Davis is doing World NLCS, so Adam does a good job. And
they got that, and then they got the Chiefs 49ers game. But,
yeah, that's the big one.
They gave us the next one.
That's a game I know I'm going to be looking forward to watching. And for more on Luke, more on Matt, check them out over at Locked On Vikings, Locked On Lions, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Texans are going to be facing the Green Bay Packers, obviously for Houston, CJ Stroud matching up with the Packers, Jordan Love. A very exciting matchup of two really good young quarterbacks. We have Big Sarge over at Locked On Texans and Peter Bukowski over at Locked On Packers. They have a lot of information that you need to know about this contest.
Thank you for making Locked On Packers and or Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, go check out Locked On NFL now with 2 shows every day. The Madman Tyler Rowland, who Big Sarge knows, from the AFC South, brings you a double shot of morning NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins, who Big Sarge knows in the AFC South, for some real NFL talk. Find out Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. 2 of my absolute favorite people to talk football with. Go check that out. You are lucky that you get to do crossovers with them twice a year, Sarge. So paint me a picture for a Houston Texans win. What does it look like? What is the one thing they need to do to get that dub?
In order to get that dub, they have to make sure that they protect the ball, because the Packers secondary is ball hawks as well. Mm-hmm. They love, and if I'm not mistaken, they lead the NFL in interceptions
and in total turnovers. All the turnover stats, Green Bay's at the top.
Yeah. But the one thing that CJ Stroud is very good at doing is protecting the ball. Yep. I mean, he has some interceptions this year. The interception that he threw last week really wasn't his fault. It hit Dalton Schultz in the hand, and so CJ is not just going to give the ball away. What I'm curious to see, and we talked about the wide receivers of the Green Bay Packers. I want to see if Nixon. And I want to see if Jair Alexander, if they're able to stay in front of Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs. Even without Nico Collins, they're really good. I want to see if the Packers defense can stop Joe Mixon or re-energize Joe Mixon, who's coming back and playing with a vengeance. And so that offense has to get going early and often against the Packers. And they also have to be able to supplement for the injuries, because there may not be an Azeez Al-Shaair. There may not be a Henry Toa. There may not be a Kamari Lassiter. And they have to have that next man up mentality. And so Neville Hewitt is going to have to step up. And here's a former linebacker that when he was with the Jets, he was a starter, had one season, I think he had 143 tackles. And so he's capable of doing it. It's just that he hasn't gotten the reps and the opportunity. So the offense is definitely going to have to get going early and often, no penalties, so they can sustain long drives. And then that defense is going to have to step up and put a lot of pressure on Jordan Love.
So the key to me, at least defensively for the Packers, is no big plays, because Houston's offense has really been reliant on not just big plays, but late down big plays. 3rd down, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12. You get a holding call on 1st down. You pick up 8 yards, and then it's, you're having to work from behind the sticks. The Packers have to take advantage of that. Right now, the Houston Texans offense, 25th in success rate. The Packers are going to say, if you want to go 10 plays, 12 plays, 14 plays, be our guests, because we don't think you can do it. And we think we're going to make enough negative plays, whether it's a TFL in the run game, whether it's a sack, whether it's a forced fumble or an interception, that's good enough, because that's the way the Packers play defense. They're a top 12 defense by EPA per play, but that's really only because of turnovers. They fall to 20th when you take away the turnovers, down to down, play to play. Well, the weird thing about that is that's not what the Texans are doing well, even though it seems like they should. So don't let this be the week that they do that, because that certainly is something that could happen with CJ Stroud, but he's just that good. And then on the offensive side, I kind of telegraphed it. It's don't let those defensive ends wreck the game. if you don't let those guys, especially at this point where the defense, the best players are now Hunter, Anderson, and Stingley. And I think the rest of that back seven, if you're playing two backup linebackers, a backup corner, a backup safety, that back seven is potentially vulnerable. So if you can block it up front, I'm thinking heavy play action where you get these two-man concepts, Christian Watson over the top. They're running dagger. They're running Yankee. They're running all these big inbreaker, Kyle Shanahan kind of stuff that theoretically the Texans have seen in practice every day for 2 years.
Yeah.
Then I think the Packers can move the ball. I kind of like this matchup for the Packers right now. I'm going to be honest. And I said this earlier in the week. I think you'll appreciate it because you made the same point. If this game were in week 11, in week 12, I don't think I would be as confident as I am today because the Texans haven't quite hit their stride offensively. I think they will. I think they'll get Nico Collins back and they'll be a really good team. So Texans fans, don't get mad at me. Yeah. But I think I like the Packers in this game, something like 27-23, 27-24, something like that. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a good game. But I do think the Packers at home, they're clicking right now offensively in a way that the Texans are not. And so I like that.
Well, I have it the other way. I think that the Texans are going to win 28-14, and I think that they're going to force
14.
Yeah, because I don't think that Jordan Love is going to. So when I look at the comparison of the quarterbacks real quick, I like Jordan Love, but he can be forced into a lot of errors. And once his feet gets choppy back there, and once he starts, he's good on the move, but he isn't as good.
Hey, listen, tell your head coach, because he said Jordan Love is the best quarterback that they played this season, and they played Josh Allen already this season. So DeMeco Ryans believes in Jordan Love.
Yeah, but I mean, DeMeco Ryans also believed in Anthony Richardson. He also believed in Caleb Williams. He also believed in Trevor Lawrence. Oh, you see what I'm saying? He also said that Drake May, is going to come in and do an absolute job. I mean, we know how these coaches speak, but at the end of the day, Jordan Love is a very good quarterback, and it's going to be the best quarterback, yes, that they played up to now, because at the end of the season they had to play Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson back to back. So yes, Jordan Love is really good, but I mean, he's also subject to throw either 4 touchdowns or he could possibly throw 4 interceptions. And that's where it gets a little
he almost
sketchy.
Did that against the Vikings.
That's where it gets a little sketchy to me, especially when they were down 28-0 and they did come back and score 22 points in the fourth quarter. Yeah, but that's a lot.
29-3 run after going down 28-0.
So all I'm saying is that I got the Texans at 28-14.
See, I look at what happened in Minnesota, and I watched that tape. I watched that game. And I saw a team a well-schemed offense, because Sam Darnold can be forced into turnovers too. A well-schemed offense with good tackles. Zach Tom has not allowed a pressure this season. Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker, one of the best offensive tackle duos in the league. I look at that and I see a well-schemed offense can attack the perimeter and the deep half against the Texans. And so I think the Packers are going to be schemed up enough offensively. I have belief in Matt LaFleur. That even though I have so much respect for DeMeco Ryans, I just think from a personnel standpoint, Green Bay has an advantage there.
Well, let me ask you a question real quick, Peter.
Yeah.
Have they went up against 2 defensive ends like Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. that play the wide 9? Like, because it's easy
to
play.
This. I mean, they're the best edge pass rushers in the league right now, probably as a duo.
And so that's what I'm saying. It's easy for those tackles to be that good when they have that help from the interior, because the defensive ends are playing this close. When you spread them out and put them one-on-one on the island, now you got to see how good they are. And I mean, you also got to remember Danielle Hunter, Minnesota Vikings. He's seen these tackles before. He's seen this offense before. So that's all I'm saying, man.
Well, Zach Tom has seen them before. So was Rasheed Walker. So, it's familiarity breeds contempt. I think there's going to be some contempt. I think this is going to be a playoff atmosphere on Sunday. Both of these teams want this game bad. This is a statement opportunity. Someone's going to make a statement on Sunday. I think it's going to be the Packers. You think it's going to be the Texans?
Be sure to check out Big Sarge over at Locked On Texans, Peter over at Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's move to a full AFC matchup here. You got the Tennessee Titans and the Buffalo Bills. The Bills just acquired Amari Cooper from the Cleveland Browns, and the expectation is he'll suit up on Sunday. The Tennessee Titans are having some bad vibes going on, particularly Calvin Ridley, who's not happy with his target share. The Titans certainly disappointing this season. Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans, Joe Marino of Locked On Bills have the matchup, storylines, and more that you need to know.
Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. I'm Joe Marino, host of Locked On Bills, joined by Tyler Rowland, the host of Locked On Titans. And it's time to talk about the path to victory for each side of the equation. Tyler, the Tennessee Titans come into Orchard Park, pretty heavy underdogs. What do they got to do? What do they got to do to get this win?
Well, I think number one, they have to run the football with success. If they don't do that, then they're going to put too much pressure on Will Levis, and he's not playing his best football. I think number two, they have to contain Josh Allen in the pocket. Going back to that game against Houston, watching Allen kind of struggle with some accuracy at times. I think you don't want to let Josh Allen out of the pocket and let him play make and do what he does so well naturally. I think you hem him in the pocket and make him kind of 10, 12 play drives, be accurate, be consistent over and over and over again, all the way down the field and hope for a mistake. And at the end of the day, the Titans got to pray. You know, like the Buffalo Bills are just a lot better football team. And I say pray, tongue in cheek, of course, but really the third thing is they got to force turnovers. The only way that the turnovers are the great equalizer in football. A team can upset another team if they win the turnover battle. So if the Titans are able to force, 2 or 3 turnovers and protect the ball on their end, they're going to set themselves up with short fields. They're going to take away scoring opportunity from the Bills, who are probably going to drive the ball down the field with more consistency. So for me, if the Titans run the football, they contain Josh Allen in the pocket and make him play with precision and accuracy consistently, and then ultimately win the turnover battle by a significant margin, they'll be able to pull off a big upset, which the Titans and Bills have played some tight games. The Titans have pulled some upsets on the Bills in recent years, but that last matchup did not go that way, and this is a different Titans team. So I think if they do those 3 things, they give themselves a chance, but I think it's quite an uphill battle for the Titans to win this one.
No, the Bills will be excited to get back home. They just finished a 3 game stretch of all road games at Houston, at Baltimore, at the Jets. This is their first home game in a while, and so I'm sure they'll be quite excited to be back in Orchard Park. And you mentioned turnovers. I agree with you that the Titans are going to need some things to go their way to get this win. Surprisingly, the Bills have been really good at taking care of the football. They've only had two giveaways this year, and they were both lost fumbles. Josh Allen hasn't thrown an interception. It's not because there hasn't been catchable passes to be intercepted, but they got to catch them, right? So that's part of the deal. He's had some good interception luck, which maybe, as you mentioned with Will Levis last year, like that can happen where, you could have a lot more interceptions if the other team caught it. So I do agree with you that that's part of the equation here for Tennessee, and obviously running the football. And the Bills structurally, with the way they play defense, they give a lot of light boxes. They're very much focused on taking away explosives down the field, and they'll give you light boxes. They gave the Jets 76% light boxes, 6 or fewer. They did the same thing with Baltimore, Tyler. So the ground game could be there. It's about, can you finish drives? And so it'll be fun to kind of see how that plays itself out, as I'm sure this Titans team's looking to find some momentum here and see if they can scratch and claw. I mean, obviously Houston looks good in that division, but I'm not sure anyone else does. So why not be the second place team and see if you can give Houston a run? From the Bills side of things, Tyler, I got 3 things written down. You mentioned earlier in our conversation the pivot, if you will, to getting the ball out of Will Levis's hands quickly, the quick passing game. I'll tell you what, that's not been something the Bills have been very good at defending. And I think this is going to be a good challenge for them. Obviously, there's good weapons here. They have good skill players in Tennessee. Tight end Chig and Pollard and 3 good receivers. Like they're good players. Give you some numbers here that might get you excited if you're a Titans fan. So far this season, the Bills are allowing 55.8% of all passing yards to come after the catch. That's the 6th highest percentage in the NFL. They're giving up a ton of yards after catch, despite the 8th lowest average depth of target. The Bills' defense is 25th in EPA on throws under 10 air yards, with the highest average separation at 4.5 yards. Where the Bills' defense is shaky is this quick passing game, perimeter throws, get the ball out quick into the hands of playmakers and make it a space game. And teams have had success doing that against Buffalo. And I think you still need to have some threat of verticality to your offense. But if Tennessee can stress the Bills defense in that way, I think that's going to go a long way in maybe exposing an area of concern for the Bills and maybe leaning into something that Tennessee does want to beat. Number two, I have written down, you got to be ready for a physical defensive front. This Tavondre Sweat dude's good, man. Jeffrey Simmons is good. There's some nice players in this front. You think about even Sebastian Joseph Day's a veteran.
Yep.
Ernest Jones is a good downhill backer. So there's some players here in this front, and defensively, I mean, all the metrics are good for Tennessee. And so, the Bills want to run the football, and I think this is a physical front that is going to be an interesting challenge, and especially a guy like Tavondre Sweat, who, to me, he's a math changer. What I mean by that is he changed. Like, you talk about playing light boxes, it's never a light box when Tavondre Sweat's in there, right? Correct. That guy's an animal, a really good-looking young player. So got to be ready for this physical defensive front that you can't take lightly. And then I think number three is take your chances with these corners. The Bills are looking to kind of, like you mentioned earlier, kind of get some explosive plays going in the passing game. They just traded for Amari Cooper. Kind of interested to see what his role is going to be on Sunday. But, man, L'Jarius Sneed has not looked good. And can you continue that? I mean, Sneed's been unbelievable. His time with the Chiefs against the Bills, he pretty much just took Stephon Diggs off the menu, right? You couldn't complete a pass on this guy. And he looks like a shell of himself. Well, you might want to try that out. And I'll tell you what, Jarvis Brownlee, I'm a big fan of him. He's still a rookie, right? You might want to try that out. So you have some opportunities here in the passing game that I think, as you're trying to get your perimeter threats going, you might have some good opportunities to test that out and see if you can get some chemistry established with Josh Allen and really his brand new wide receiver core that continues to be brand new.
Yeah, well, the Titans play a lot of cover 4 too, and I think that stresses the cornerbacks. You got to be able to play your side, you know what I mean? And you got to stay with them vertically, and it just requires a lot of during the play processing. And I've seen, at least like last week, there were coverage issues where, hey, am I taking this guy or are you taking this guy? In the past, the Titans have had problems with that. I mean, I know it was Shane Bowen's defense, not Denard Wilson's, but you're just asking a lot of cornerbacks when you're playing like cover 4 man like that. And I think that it does create some indecision. And if you can get a guy with some speed, maybe Keon Coleman won't take advantage, but if Amari Cooper is out there, and maybe some wheel routes, like the Titans had a touchdown because they were playing cover 4 and Jarvis Brownlee Jr. stayed with the post, but then the wheel route came behind it and nobody was home. And like, you're just going to get yourself in bad positions if you weren't really playing coordinated defense and everybody understands. And when you have a young player like Jarvis Brownlee Jr. in there, there could be some indecision. And even L'Jarius Sneed as well has struggled with some of those during the play processing moments. There was a deep corner route by Joe Flacco last week that was wide open where Sneed didn't bail off the inside guy quick enough to get back to it. So Buffalo will probably have the opportunity to take advantage of those. A lot of those haven't hit because quarterbacks have been inaccurate, but if Josh Allen can put it on them, there are some chances for big plays because of the way the Titans like to play defense.
I'm really interested in this Titans defense because the Bills have the Baltimore Ravens, like obviously that coaching staff, that defensive coaching staff has been depleted. And the Bills have played all of them. They played Miami. So Anthony Weaver from Baltimore went to Miami. They played Baltimore, of course, like Zach Orr, who's their defensive coordinator, part of that staff. This week they get Denard Wilson, who's part of that Ravens staff. And next week they get Mike McDonald with Seattle. So this has been just an absolute tour of the Ravens defensive scheme. So you like to think they've had a lot of ideas and opportunities to kind of see what they can do. And we'll see if the Titans metrically continue to be a great defense. It'll be a fun game.
We'll see which one of those teams can come out on top. For more on Tyler, check him out at Locked On Titans. For more on Joe, check him out over at Locked On Bills, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up in the second part of this Ultimate NFL pregame show here in Week 7, we'll be diving into the rest of the 1 p.m. matchup. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to dive into on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. First, this show is brought to you by Arena Club. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Lamar Jackson rookie card, Patrick Mahomes rookie card, just isn't in the cards. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com. Now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of the retail price. Every card that's listed was a hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides value, real value, a complete view of all possible cards and a clear hit rate for each one. And for Arena Club slab packs, I mean, the experience is just so much better than those mystery packs made of purchases in the past. You got transparency. The display of available cards is awesome. The hit rates are incredible. The grading is exquisite and so much more. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and explanation of how your card was scored. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/LockedOnNFL, code LockedOnNFL for 10% off your first purchase. We're back, our second segment here on the Ultimate NFL pregame show, taking you through everything you need to know leading up to kickoff on Sunday. We had the Denver Broncos absolutely destroy the New Orleans Saints on Thursday Night Football. Maybe not the outcome many expected in that game, but man, it was a absolute beatdown in that game. But getting back to the 1 p.m. games that are set for Sunday, let's start off with a big NFC matchup, the Seattle Seahawks and the Atlanta Falcons. Geno Smith versus Kirk Cousins, two teams looking to pick up a big win on their quest to hopefully securing a playoff spot down the line. You have Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks plus Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons combining to give you every single insight that you need to keep in mind as this contest kicks off at 1 p.m. on Sunday.
So Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons, joined by Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks on this crossover Thursday, presented by PrizePicks. Make sure you download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll win $50 instantly when you play $5. So we are talking keys to victory, or, hey, you know, the more long-winded answer, what are the things you got to do to help you win the football game? And so, Corbin, what are 3 things that Seattle needs to do in order to win this football game?
First off, I think they've got to run for at least 90 yards in this game. And you've mentioned Atlanta's issues defending the run. They're ranked 26th in the NFL. Seattle, for the most part, has not been able to run against anybody. But there have been spurts this year, second half against Denver. That's a very good Denver defense. Ken Walker ran for almost 90 yards in the second half in that game alone. Against the Lions, he had 3 rushing touchdowns in that game in the second half. So there have been moments where this run game has been really good, but then it will disappear either because Ryan Grubb just doesn't stick with it, or they are not able to get push up front. If they are not able to run the football in this game, playing on the road against a high-powered offense on the other side that you want to keep on the sideline, it's going to be extremely difficult for them to win this game. So an offense, to me, you can talk about all the weapons they have on the outside. It's not going to matter. If you come in thinking you're going to sling the rock 50 times against that secondary and you're going to have success, it's going to be another loss for the Seattle Seahawks. They have got to be able to run the football. But I think defense is really where the keys to victory lie in this game. On the defensive side of the ball, this is kind of that low-hanging fruit, but Mike Macdonald's defenses normally create a lot of turnovers. That has not been the case for this defense so far. They've gotten 1 interception from Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon combined so far. They have not been able to generate very many turnovers, only a couple of interceptions this season, despite all the talent and the scheme that they have. They've got to find a way to coax Kirk Cousins into a pick, force a fumble. They got to get at least 2 turnovers in this game because they have consistently been losing the turnover margin. The defense needs to get some quick changes to get the ball back to Geno Smith with good field position and let the offense have an opportunity to cash in on that. And the last thing, you cannot let Bijan Robinson dominate this game. It goes back to the trenches here, run game wise. You cannot let Robinson and Tyler Algier, for that matter, you can't let these running backs get rolling. They have got to hold the Falcons. I'm even going to go this. If they can keep them under 120 rushing yards, I think the Seahawks have a decent chance to win this football game. But if they let the Falcons run the ball the way that teams have the last 3 weeks and get into the 150 plus, 160 plus range, it's going to be extremely difficult for them to have a shot to win this game on the road.
Yeah, I think those are all big things. And sort of piggybacking on a couple of those things, for me, the big 3 keys for the Falcons to walk away with a victory is, number 1, it's all about turnovers, right? Limit turnovers on offense, create those turnovers on defense. Number 2, you got to make Geno Smith uncomfortable. And then number 3, I think you want to get the crowd going with a fast start, right? Seattle hasn't usually, doesn't fall into the usual trap of being that sort of slow starter on these early games on the East Coast, historically speaking. But, might as well try to get that going by getting off to a fast starter for the Atlanta Falcons. And I think this game is going to be sort of what has been consistent through line for most Falcon games this season. It's probably going to be a nail biter, a back and forth game. You're going to get probably a 1-score game going into the final 5 minutes of this game. And so for me, a lot of those keys to victory for the Falcons are kind of set yourself up for success so that you can be better in a position in those closing minutes to make the plays. And so ultimately, the team that's probably going to win is the team that makes the most plays in those final 5 minutes, or potentially has the ball last and gets that last opportunity to kick that game-winning field goal or that go-ahead touchdown or whatever in the closing minutes. So I think with turnovers, if you can create turnovers, you're going to set up your team for success and limit your own turnovers. And I think with getting Geno Smith uncomfortable, going back to the point earlier with the Seattle offensive line struggling, can you get pressure on the quarterback, something that has been sorely missing from the Atlanta Falcons, as well as going back to the point where you're going to play this bend but don't break defense. And as you pointed out, Corbin, less maybe Geno Smith and more Ryan Grubb. They want to push the ball down the field and sort of, get them, and that's where the fast start. Like, get them behind in a game where they feel more compelled to want to push the ball down the field rather than taking what the defense is going to give them, which is that bend but don't break style and that dink and dunk stuff. So I think those are going to be the big parts for the Falcons, and that should set them up for success so that they can potentially have that lead going into the final 5 minutes and just need to sort of hold on and win the game. I know these last couple of weeks, Seattle has been a slow starter. Looking at first half points over the last 3 games, Atlanta is 5th in the NFL, Seattle's 26. Looking at second half points in the last 3 games, Atlanta is 15th and Seattle is 2nd. So if Seattle's lost all 3 of those games. So if you can get them starting off slow, again, get that Atlanta Falcons offense starting fast and force Seattle to play from behind, I think that's going to set up Atlanta for success. But with that 3-point line, Corbin, how are you feeling about how this thing, breaks down?
Oddly enough, with the Seahawks riding this 3-game losing streak and the Falcons playing the way they are, maybe I'm overestimating the value of that mini bye, but I do think you look at what Seattle just did. They played 3 games in 10 days. They had a gauntlet there in terms of playing 3 games that felt like they were just back to back to back, and they didn't have a chance to really catch their breath. They've had that the last 10 days. And Atlanta has had enough issues defensively that haven't led to points all the time, that you got to feel like if the Seahawks with this extra time, if they took advantage of it from a self-scouting standpoint and they were able to get healthier, that they have the pieces to be able to make life difficult for Atlanta's defense and be able to finish some of those drives off. So I don't know if the Seahawks win this game, but I think this is going to be a very close game. I think they cover that 3-point deficit that they have as an underdog. I think it's going to be one of those games. It could be a 1 or 2 point win for one team or the other. I think these two teams, when they are both playing at their peak, are very evenly matched. They have a lot of fireworks on the offensive side of the football. They have defensive minds coaching their teams to try to offset that. I think this can be a really fun, compelling matchup as long as the Seahawks actually show up. We haven't seen them do the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way of looking at it. Again, as I said, I think it's going to be a close game. So I think it could go either way. Obviously, I'm going to lean towards the Falcons given how they've played the last couple of weeks versus how Seattle has played the last couple of weeks in terms of covering that spread. But again, I think this may be a Younghoe Koo, walk-off sort of field goal or whatever for either one of these teams to win this game in those closing minutes. So certainly makes total sense to think that Seattle could definitely cover that 3-point spread.
Corbin is awesome with the Seahawks insight. Be sure to check him out over at Locked On Seahawks. And of course, Aaron is awesome with his Falcons insight. Check him out over at Locked On Falcons, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We got an NFC East matchup, a big one over in the Meadowlands. The Philadelphia Eagles. There's been some controversy with Nick Sirianni over there. They'll be taking on Daniel Jones in that group, who's coming off a tough Sunday night loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. So you have Gino Camilleri of Locked On Eagles, as well as Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. They're going to be taking you through all the drama that's going on and why this is a big game for both teams.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Crossover Thursday. Locked On Giants, Locked On Eagles. I'm Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. He is Gino Camilleri of Locked On Eagles. And Gino, give me your keys to a Philadelphia victory.
Number 1, Jalen Hurts cannot turn the ball over. You see the results when he holds on to the ball. They take care of it. He doesn't give the offense of the other team good field position. Hold on to the football. Number 2, this Eagles defense, they need the New Orleans performance and they need the performance against the Browns. In those 2 games, they combined to allow the offense to score a single touchdown in both of those games. So They have to do that against a Giants team, which at home last week did not put up many points with their offense. And number 3, the hidden points matter. Their special teams has been downright abysmal. At the end of the half last week, they kick a 57-yarder. It ends up getting blocked by Myles Garrett. All of a sudden, a 17-3 game turns into a 10-10 game. You cannot give teams, especially in a division game, multiple chances to stay in it. So the offense, defense, special teams, they all got to click. It seems simple, but every single week they seem to mess it up. And I still think it's because they do not have the right guy up top calling all the shots right now.
Hey, hold our beer. We have the same problem. Not that we have the right guy at the top, but I'm saying as far as playing complementary football, all 3 units, we definitely have had problems with the Giants doing that.
Can't have Thanksgiving dinner together. That's how I like to say it. They all got to sit at separate tables.
Exactly. From a Giants perspective, obviously, they need Daniel Jones to play like the Daniel Jones we saw against the Seattle Seahawks. He was sharp, not many mistakes. And then he comes out against the Cincinnati Bengals and that whopper of an interception in the red zone. I mean, you just can't have that. So score in the red zone, I call it the dead zone. It's Halloween's coming up, so we'll call it the dead zone because it's been spooky. And for whatever reason, Daniel Jones gets spooked when he's down inside the 20. So we need better production from Daniel Jones for the Giants to start scoring some points. I mean, they've got this creative offense that Brian Dable's trying to run, but what good is it if you're not getting into the end zone, right? All right. So from the other side of the ball, this is going to sound very elementary, but Saquon Barkley worries me. He's playing well. He was always, you don't realize what you have until he's gone. And you go back and you look at the tape, and he doesn't look like he's lost a step at all. And I have to believe he's going to come into the MetLife Stadium motivated. He's got a lot of friends still, amongst the coaching staff, amongst the players. But I don't get the feeling there's any love lost between him and maybe Joe Shane, the general manager, because they couldn't get a deal done with him. So I think Saquon, is going to come in here and he's going to want to show everybody, yeah, I still got it. This is what you guys gave up. So stopping him is going to be key. And, the Giants, the run defense has gotten a little bit better, but you still have those breakdowns where the run fits aren't there or guys aren't maintaining, the integrity. They're not containing. So I'm a little concerned about that, guys getting washed out or sealed off. So I'm curious to see how how they defend Saquon, because Saquon can set up so many things for the Eagles passing game. So if you can make the Eagles one-dimensional, you might just have a chance of forcing a few of those Jalen Hurts turnovers that I know Eagle fans are hoping not to see on Sunday.
Deshaun Jackson, when he left to go to Washington, had a quote that said, "I don't care about the result of the game. I just want to go for 100 and a touchdown." And he did exactly that. I know Saquon Barkley did not have a quote, but he said one today that said, "I could go for 300 yards or 10 yards as long as we win." And I think that's the biggest load of crap. I'm with you, Patricia. I would be worried about him too. He has not lost a step. If you do not maintain your rush lanes, he might get stopped for a rush for 2 yards, 3 yards, go back for a -1, but then all of a sudden he has one for 68 yards that puts you right back in the football game. And the Eagles, they win with their run game right now. There's no doubt about it. You have to stop Saquon Barkley if you want to win, and I think the Eagles have to get him going if they want to win football games. And it's going to come down to the quarterback taking care of the football. I think at the end of the day, whichever one does not have the turnovers, I think is going to win the football game. And hopefully it's not a slop fest. Hopefully we actually get some good offensive performance and the defense tackles well. And we're saying, oh, okay, both teams played well. And at the end of the day, one comes out with a win, one comes out with a loss. But hopefully it's my Philadelphia Eagles, because I do not want to go and talk to Lou if this team's 3-3 come Monday.
Well, I don't have to worry about that since I go solo, but I don't want to have to come on and do another downer show like I did on Monday.
They're the worst. I want to be positive.
They are the absolute worst. And I feel bad for my listeners because every week it's like, what's going on? How do we fix this? And it's the same thing, it's like, everybody's back on the get rid of Daniel Jones train or do this, that. And, at this point, the roster is what it is. I don't know how much more they can tweak it at this point. But yeah, it would not be a good thing for the Giants to lose to the Eagles. They did beat them the last time they met. So there's hope. And like you said, Nick Sirianni is running the show. And I'm sorry, Eagle fans, but that dude is just wow.
If you want entertainment, the Eagles will provide that. That is for certain. You should be watching this game for the entertainment value alone, because Nick Sirianni is going to do something that's going to make you say, what is this? This guy's a head coach of a football team. But the players are what we support, and I think they have what it takes to go get it done. And I think this is a little bit higher scoring than their last game was, and I think they're going to give the Giants some opportunities to push the football. And if you're over at FanDuel, I think go with the over. I don't know what the points total is right now. I'm sure it's around 46 or 47, but I think a lot of points are going to be scored, especially in a 1 o'clock window. Neither team is in prime time. They can just operate with Eagles fans and Giants fans watching, nobody else, no stressors. But this is the first one of the year. NFC East matchups, nothing better, best division in football. Hopefully both of our fans enjoy it.
I don't know what's going to happen with Philadelphia if they lose this game, but there is certainly a little bit of a seat warmer thing going on with Nick Sirianni over there in Philadelphia. So for more on Gino, check him out over at Locked On Eagles. More on Patricia, check her out over at Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next, we're sticking with the interdivision matchups. You got the Battle of Ohio, the Cincinnati Bengals traveling to Cleveland. Cleveland did trade away Amari Cooper, and they are just an absolute mess right now with the Deshaun Watson situation. And for Cincinnati, looking to continue to get their season back on track after their big Sunday night win. So we got James Rapine and Jake Lisco of Locked On Bengals, Jeff Lloyd of Locked On Browns, taking it through who's going to win this big AFC North bout.
Let's talk about those keys to victory. If Cleveland does score in all 4 quarters, well, the Bengals may be in trouble. But Jeff, from your perspective, as you think about how the Browns could carve out a path to victory in this game at home, their first home game, as you mentioned, in 5 weeks, I guess, 4 weeks, depending on the way you think about that. What are the 3 things the Browns need to go right to win this game?
I'm going to start with this and trying to be positive. The Bengals don't have much film to go off of here, because what have you seen from the Browns to this point? You've seen 12, 13 targets a week thrown at Amari Cooper. They're not throwing that much because Deshaun Watson is getting sacked a lot. It's going to be a little bit difficult to game plan because, you don't know what to expect from Jerry Jeudy. Cedric Tillman's figures to see more snaps. Elijah Moore, David Njoku's back. Nick Chubb is, of course, back. The rookie Jamari Thrash should get some run. So basically, the Bengals are going to have to be the guinea pig for whatever the Browns are for the next couple of weeks. I don't expect all of a sudden we're going to see, the Bill Walsh playbook come out and all of a sudden things are going to look hunky-dory. But again, the Bengals are basically just going to have to play straight up and see what's coming at them. So that was an advantage that maybe the Browns do have for them. The other advantage is, look, in games like this is a good opportunity for both teams because you don't really have to overthink it. These two rosters know each other extremely well. They know what the Bengals can give them. The Bengals know what the Browns can give them. So, yeah, it's going to be an advantage for somebody. It's certainly going to be a disadvantage for somebody else, obviously, in this game. But it sounds so sad to say, but put together consistency. Put together 4 quarters of football, things that carry over. There's been times where, last week you get to half, 10-10. All right, things look really good, right? All right, they got the ball second half. They're already at the 30. Hey, it's 3rd and inches. All right, James is on. Here comes the QB sneak. No, we run a jet sweep to Cedric Tillman, who hasn't touched the ball in 3 weeks. You just find a way to shoot yourselves in the foot, or you overthink it, or you just try to be more than you are. Keep it simple, stupid, simple. That's it. Just go out there and play the game. Understand what you have from Nick and what you don't. It's probably going to be 2 to 3 touches per quarter at best. Work around that. But, it's sad that you have to go to the simplicity of this, but that's really where the Browns are at. It's literally making sure you tied both shoes correctly before you get on the field.
And make sure that you have a left and a right shoe as we continue to review our keys to victory in Crossover Thursday presented by PrizePicks. You can download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly with your first $5 play. James, your thoughts on any of the keys to victory that Jeff mentioned or the keys for the Bengals themselves?
Yeah, I think tying your shoes is important. I think the Browns will be good there. As far as the Bengals are concerned, let's start here. You have to start fast. the Bengals get their butts kicked by the Browns every time they don't start fast and they get behind. And Baker Mayfield, after Odell Beckham Jr. leaves, gets into a rhythm after releasing Odell Beckham Jr. Or last year, this defense can get downhill and the Bengals are in drop back passing situations. So that's number one. Number two is being efficient on the ground. You don't have to be super. It would be great to be explosive and average 10 yards a carry. But if you're getting 4.5 yards a carry and efficient, and you're giving Joe Burrow 2nd and 5 or 3rd and 2, that's much, much different than we've seen in past matchups. And I think that's a huge one. And then number 3, it is making sure that the Browns crowd hates Deshaun Watson, hates number 4 more at halftime than they do when he's introduced, like Jeff mentioned. So what does that mean? Not let him get into a rhythm. Make sure that you're all over him, that he's throwing incompletes, that he's uncomfortable, and whether that's Sheldon Rankins having a big day, and I think he's due for a big day at some point as a pass rusher. Obviously, we know what Trey Hendrickson brings. B.J. Hill coming off of probably his best game as a Bengal. This defensive front needs to get home, and along with that, obviously, it means don't let Nick Chubb have the magical Disney-like comeback in his first game back. He can have that next week. You don't want him to have it this week. So much, much easier said than done. And they all go pretty hand in hand, because if you're starting fast, you're probably at least efficient on the ground. You're getting off the field early on defense by pressuring Watson and taking care of Nick Chubb. So it all goes hand in hand, but I think those are the 3 things the Bengals need to do to get the first win in Cleveland of the Joe Burrow era.
Yeah, I just want to underline taking advantage of this Cleveland offensive line in the departure of Bill Callahan to Tennessee to go coach for his son. That offensive line, with personnel changes, with injuries, with the departure of their coach, with the quarterback play, with all of the things going wrong with that Browns offense right now, is one of the more vulnerable offensive lines they've played this year. Go back to week 1 against New England for the last, I would say, very questionable offensive line. Trey Henderson against Jedrick Wills on the left side there is a big one that I'm circling. And you talk about turning the crowd or taking the crowd out of it, or whatever you want to call it. You can do that by consistently disrupting Deshaun Watson back there.
For sure. I think regardless of Chubb, you don't want him to get even semi-comfortable back there. And you want him in games like this, you want the crowd to get uneasy quick. And then it just feels like that weight that is on these players' shoulders gets that much bigger.
Of course.
And it's the same way the other way for the Browns. If you get off to a good start, then that weight of 1-5 against the Browns, not winning in Cleveland, that on the Bengals' shoulders gets bigger. And so I think that early on in this game, whoever's getting that weight off their shoulders and feeling good and making plays, that's going to be the team that probably wins this first matchup in the Battle of Ohio this year.
Yeah, you mentioned the fast starts, and I just think of Myles Garrett getting the tee off. Even if he is a little bit diminished, he's still a freak and still a really great player. Or the Browns not having to put the ball in Deshaun Watson's hands and just getting behind a run game. And that's the way these games have really gotten away from the Bengals, in addition to turnovers, which are obviously things that both teams will want to take care of in this game.
Check out Jake and James over at Locked On Bengals. Check out Jeff over at Locked On Browns, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The last 1 p.m. matchup here, the Miami Dolphins coming off of their bye week, taking on the Indianapolis Colts, who were expected to have Anthony Richardson obviously back under center after a few Joe Flacco games. Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins, Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts wrap up the 1 p.m. section here by taking it through key storylines, keys to victory, and so much more.
And welcome back to Crossover Thursday, which is presented by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So, Kyle, let's talk about it. What do the Dolphins have to do to get a win? Because, I mean, they're coming off one and then a bye week. So, I mean, they could string another one together.
I think they need to have something the Colts haven't seen, regardless of what that is. I think you need to take advantage of having an extra week of preparation to get ready for one opponent and hit them with something that is new and not on film, that you have high confidence, and the guys on the field that you're asking to do it have high confidence in their ability to execute it. So I don't necessarily mean like a trick play or a bag of tricks or anything like that, but you need to have a definitive new wrinkle that is built off of something that you've done, and take advantage of this extra preparation because, as we said earlier, just offense has been hard. It's been very challenging thus far this season to move the ball with any level of consistency, particularly in the passing game. I mean, this Dolphins team, they passed for 319 against the Colts, 212 against the Bills, 205 against, or 140, excuse me, against Seattle, 178 against Tennessee, and then 179 against the Patriots. So I think that's a big piece of the puzzle for them. They also need to not shoot themselves in the foot. A lot of early down penalties, procedural penalties. There's been a big focus in getting up to the line of scrimmage, giving yourself time. For Mike McDaniel, he really has not taken the easy route and trimmed a lot of fat off of their shifts and motions. It's another one of those core principles things that they do, but you're on your third string quarterback and a guy that wasn't on the team at the start of the season. So you've seen some hiccups in that regard. And now you're playing on the road. You played in the road against New England this past game that you played, but being on the road, you procedurally, you can't beat yourself. And that's really what's put them behind the sticks a lot of the times. You see some rhythm and then the drive comes to a screeching halt because they beat themselves. So as I think about Miami, particularly offensively, I think those are the two big things. And then defensively, it's got to be Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell taking advantage of those matchups that we've talked about on the inside. If you have young and inexperienced players that have to play for the Colts, that has to be like the disruptive spot, because that gives you the ability to do a lot more on your back end and properly space the field against vertical shot plays and not give them time to let that develop.
You mentioned rhythm, and that is kind of exactly what I was going to get at with the Colts. Each of these last couple games, they've started out really, really quickly, march down the field, score a touchdown, and then it's like they just hit a wall, and they're searching for long periods of time before they can find more points. Last week they were really hot, and then it was an interception, and then a couple punts. The week before that, it's like they couldn't find any rhythm whatsoever until really the second half. So for them, number one is establishing an early rhythm with Anthony Richardson, because the last game he played against the Steelers, they did go down and score on the first drive, and then they scored again on the second one. So with him, just try not to miss much of a beat. And then he's also had kind of a problem with some turnovers. This year he had the 6 interceptions compared to just 3 touchdown passes. So start fast and try and find a way to carry that momentum. Like, if you get points early, don't just hit the brick wall. I mean, that's easier said than done. No one plans to do that. But take care of that ball as well if you're Anthony. And that goes to fumbles as well, because, I mean, he's very aware that he's the most athletically gifted person around normally. So he can be a little casual when he's strolling out and someone is bearing down on his blind side and just knocks the ball out. So better ball security for him through the air and on the ground. And then defensively, just, try and find that pressure on the quarterback. Now, if Miami wants to get rid of the ball super quickly and kind of follow the recipe other teams have done recently, just do your best to swarm to the ball, because I think that's kind of the counter to it. Like, if the ball is getting out of the quarterback's hands quickly, you're just not going to get to him. So just swarm to the ball and kind of play with the fundamentals. Make sure you wrap up and take it easy with all the missed tackles that have come to kind of doomed them throughout the season. So either side, I mean, obviously the Dolphins aren't getting a lot of kudos lately, but I don't take this matchup lightly. For the Colts, I think they're certainly capable of putting together a complete game. We've seen them even as recently as last week have some really big plays on offense, defense, and special teams. I mean, their punter Rigoberto Sanchez was just named today AFC Special Teams Player of the Week. I don't know how great love to see that from your punter, but I mean, it is what it is. But shoot, I mean, if they could put together another complete 3-phase game, then I like them in this one. But yeah, I'm not going to ask you for a score, but do you feel positively about this one? I mean, it's not like the Colts are a buzzsaw or anything.
I could see the pathways for Miami winning the game, but I just don't think, with who's out there playing and what the coaching has looked like, I think the coaching has not helped their players in some cases with all of this adversity. And You kind of saw it in the final drive against New England offensively where they called 7 straight runs. And it's like, oh, there it is. Former run game coordinator, really getting dialed in. They're committed to it. And lo and behold, they go down the field to score the game-winning touchdown. Like, where's that been without your starting quarterback? Like, if you told me that they could have some level of the kind of success that they did against New England and Mike was going to call the game that way, I'd feel like, yeah, I think Miami has a good chance to come in here in Indianapolis and win the game. But I don't know that that's going to happen. And because I don't know that, like, my expectations are kind of nil. And then that way you come out the other side of it and you say, okay, this is a continuation of the troubling trend that you had without your starting quarterback. Or you say, hey, this is a nice kind of foundational thing that you can build on now that your starting quarterback's eligible to come back. So that's kind of the frame of mind that me and I know a lot of Dolphins fans are at coming into this game.
Dolphins need this win, but so do the Colts. So a big win for either team that's able to pull it off. For more on Jake, check him out at Locked On Colts. More on Kyle, check him out over at Locked On Dolphins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That'll do it for the 1 p.m. slate of games. Coming up, we'll be taking you through the big 4 p.m. matchups. Only 3 of them, but each of them a massive one. Stay tuned. A lot to get to on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. First, the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. And PrizePicks absolutely love going on there, seeing all they have to offer and all the new things that they have cooking up each and every time I go on. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, East Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts, select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. So let's say for this Ravens and Buccaneers Monday night matchup, you want to pick more on Lamar Jackson passing yards, more on Baker Mayfield passing yards. Do that over on PrizePicks. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. In Week 7, the NFL offers a slate of incredible matchups, and this is the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Kevin Ostreicher here, taking you through the late window, 4 p.m. matchups. Starting off, we have to talk about the Super Bowl rematch between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers. The Chiefs coming off their bye week undefeated. San Francisco has certainly been struggling with injuries this season. Chris Clark of Locked On Chiefs, Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers have everything you need to know about the game and what each team needs to do to win.
Chris, are you a little surprised that over at FanDuel.com, the San Francisco 49ers are favored by 1.5 over the Kansas City Chiefs?
Maybe a little bit. The 49ers are a great team. To me, it's not overly surprising. I don't think that they are the team that their record suggests that they are. And in some ways, I think you could argue that the Chiefs aren't the record that their record suggests that they are. They haven't played great through 5 weeks. They're still trying to figure it out on the opposite side of the ball, and defensively they've been great. And I think that's the reason they continue to win.
The stupid league went and gave the Chiefs a bye, though, before the 49ers, too. Niners fans are kind of mad about that right now, Chris, because not only the Chiefs have a bye before this game, next week the Niners play the hated Dallas Cowboys, that even though they've lost 2 Super Bowls to the Chiefs, Niners fans still hate the Cowboys a lot more. Cowboys have a bye before they play the Niners next week as well. So 49ers
I wouldn't worry about that near as much. The Cowboys defense is not good.
I mean, that team cannot stop the run, and that's game over against the Kyle Shanahan offense if that's the case, no matter who's running the football. I think we're going to get Jordan Mason back in this one. It was a 7 to 10 day injury. He's kind of day to day right now, limited in practice. Don't know for sure, but I have a feeling he's going to go. If not, might see a lot of Patrick Taylor and rookie Isaac Guerrero out there. But I got an inkling right now it's going to be Jordan Mason playing in that one. But it's the guys blocking in front of Jordan Mason that I'm most interested in, especially rookie Dominic Pooney, 3rd-round pick for the 49ers, has been phenomenal. Stepped in because of an injury and just completely stole the starting right job guard away from Spencer Burford, and he's been unreal. The second best offensive lineman on the team after Trent Williams, obviously the future Hall of Famer at left tackle. But he's got a pretty big matchup here this week. And so talk to me about that Chiefs defensive line and how they operate against this San Francisco 49ers offensive line.
Well, I will say, I think Ryan would be really remiss and sad that he missed you saying that, because he is a Kansas fan, and Dominic Mooney is from KU. So I will have to let him know. I'll have to let him know you said that. And Pooney was the guy that we talked about a lot, actually, coming to Kansas City for just a backup swing type guy. So there was a lot of talk about him going into the season. You look at Chris Jones, and obviously, I think he's probably the best defensive tackle in the NFL right now. I don't think I saw a stat today. I think he has time to pressure of like 2.12 seconds, the fastest time to pressure in the NFL. And I mean, that's ridiculous. The one thing I will say, and this is going to be something that I think needs to continue to show its face and maybe show up even more, is Treshaun Wharton is a guy that was injured 2 years ago, came back from an ACL, didn't really do much last year. I mean, he played, but he wasn't really recovered from his ACL injury. And now he's back, and he is causing havoc next to Chris Jones. And when you have two guys that can do that at that defensive tackle position, it is critical because you can start getting pressure on the quarterback, and you get pressure on the quarterback in front of him, in front of his face, as opposed to coming from behind or around the corner. That's a huge benefit for the team. So I think that could be a big thing for this Chiefs defense trying to go up against the 49ers.
So, Chris, then paint the picture. What does a Chief victory look like on Sunday? How's this going to
go? Chiefs victory looks like them not turning the ball over. I've said this just about every single game this year. The problem is that they're at the bottom of the league in turnovers. When you start looking at turnover differential, they're not getting turnovers from the other team, and they're turning the ball over too much. So if they can, win the turnover battle, I think they have a great chance of winning this game. The other thing that I think is going to play a big part is if you go back and watch the first week of the season, they played Derrick Henry, and they held him to 46 yards on 13 carries, 3.5 yards a carry. They haven't allowed any running back so far to have a good week against them this year. And I did not expect that. I was not expecting the run defense to be even better than it was last year. And now they're going up against Jordan Mason, who is the number 2 running back in the NFL when it comes to yardage rushing. So I think that's going to be a huge matchup, and something that if they can keep him under, between 50 to 75 yards, because I don't think that they're going to stop him. But I do think that if they can keep him to 50 yards, even if it's a little over 50 yards, if it's, still only 2 to 3 yards a carry, you've got to feel pretty good about that as a defense.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating if Jordan Mason can't go, if Kyle Shanahan doesn't want to lean too much on the rookie, if they go a little bit more aerial against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
But the Niners haven't had a problem getting points on the Chiefs, especially in the first halves. And, Kyle Shanahan's, scripted 25 plays or whatever it is, I think they're good there. It's the second half adjustments is what I point to. And Spagnuolo has been so good. Reed has been so good in that capacity. And so can the 49ers close out a game when they get a lead? That's just going to linger in my head. It's going to linger in every 49ers fan's head until they prove they can do it against the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's not only been the Chiefs that's got them this year. It's happened twice. So close out the game. That is the path to victory for the 49ers. Obviously, you got to have a lead first before you can close it out. But I'm a believer in Kyle Shanahan's offense being able to put some points on the board. I think a banged up offense that we laid out here of the Kansas City Chiefs shouldn't provide too many problems for the 49ers, say jumping out on a big lead against the Niners that they have to try to come back from. Just stay in front of the sticks, run the ball a little bit. Don't get any of those obvious third down and longs so Chris Jones can go get after you. And to be honest with you, Chris Jones, it wasn't so much him just winning one-on-one matchups in the Super Bowl. It was protection busts. So block the guy you're supposed to be blocking for the 49ers. And I think the 49ers will be all right. It's going to be a close game. I'm going to say the Niners slay the dragon, though, finally, and get one here and hold on. And who knows, they might be on their third kicker in 3 weeks. They brought in Anders Carlson because the guy who was replacing Moody, who's doubtful in this game, he got hurt too, Matthew Wright. So I don't even know who's kicking for the 49ers. And that's really been the thing that's killed the 49ers, if anything, this year. They're top 5 DVOA offense and defense, but they're 31 in the NFL special teams. And so they've got to be better there, and got to limit returns, kickoffs, and got to kick that thing through the uprights when they get the opportunity and finish the job.
Yeah, and Matthew Wright used to kick for Kansas City, so I was kind of thinking maybe he would have a chance to go up against his former team because he stepped in for Harrison Butker when Butker got hurt a couple years ago. So I'm really curious to see how this game plays out. I do think it's going to be a tough one. I think it's going to be a close game. You make a great point about San Francisco being great early on. And that is another thing that Kansas City struggles with is, generally speaking, in most games that they play, it seems like the first series, they've almost always allowed some kind of points. They didn't against the Saints this past game. They got an interception. But before that, it was either a touchdown or a field goal that was allowed on the first drive of the game. And if that starts kind of that way, but you go look at their defense after that, they start shutting teams down. They start adjusting. You're talking about adjustments at halftime. They start adjusting going into the second, third, fourth drive. They figure out, okay, this is what they're going to be doing to us, and they make adjustments to try to shut that down early. And I think that's a huge key as to why they've been successful so far.
You can check Brian out over at Locked On 49ers. You can check Chris out over at Locked On Chiefs, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Washington Commanders are coming off a tough loss to the Baltimore Ravens in Week 6, and they're going to hope to get their win streak maybe started up again against the Carolina Panthers and that squad. We're going to be hearing from David Harrison of Locked On Commanders and Julian Council of Locked On Panthers as both teams outline what they need to do to get the job done.
This week's crossover episode of Locked On Panthers, Locked On Commanders is brought to you by PrizePicks. And what we're going to do now is Julian Council of Locked On Panthers and I, David Harrison of Locked On Commanders, are going to talk about the 3 things that each team has to do, must do in order to get a win this weekend. Yeah, Julian, that line started at 7.5 points in favor of the Commanders. It is now 8.5 points. The only other game with that big of a spread is Buffalo versus Tennessee. Commanders fans will be very happy to see that they're at least line-wise being compared to a team like Buffalo. It's been a long time since the Washington franchise has been that highly sought after. But what are the 3 things, Julian, the Carolina Panthers must do for Dave Canales to get a big win on the road?
Well, they probably about 30 things they must do to win this game, but we'll just stick to 3 today. Number one, I mean, defensively, as we talked about earlier, it's been bad. Aside from playing a bad Raiders offense that's already changed from Gardner Minshew to Aiden O'Connell, the Panthers have not been able to stop anybody. And looking at this Commanders offense, yikes. Number 1 in offensive EPA, number 1 in passing offense EPA, and a paltry number 4 in rushing offense EPA. The Panthers, they got their work cut out for them, and they might get Dane Jackson back this Sunday, which will certainly help in the secondary. They're still going to have some questions back there at safety, but I feel like their passing defense can hold up. But if they can't stop the run, then they're not going to really need to face the pass that much, as Jaden Daniels shouldn't be throwing the football at all. And number 2, there's going to be points scored because, as you mentioned, the Commanders don't have a good defense either. Now, it's not as bad as the Panthers' defense has been, but it's 26 in defensive EPA. And they're 27th against the pass, 24th against the run. The Panthers' rushing success rate is 54.6 so far, which is one of the top 5 in the NFL. And Chuba Hubbard has been outstanding so far this season. So as long as Dave Canales is committed to it, the Panthers will be able to control the ball, run the football down the field, and then pick and choose their opportunities to throw the ball. I mean, Deontay Johnson's also been pretty good for them when he's gotten those opportunities, and Andy Dalton has certainly stabilized the offensive passing game. Need guys like Xavier Legette to step up once again, had a touchdown last week. Jalen Coker, an undrafted free agent out of Holy Cross, he has taken over Jonathan Mingo's spot there on the depth chart. He's somebody to look out for as well. And at number 3, they got to take care of the football, and that's just a pretty simple thing every single week. But for the Panthers, they have turned the ball over in 5 of their 6 games. The one game they didn't turn it over, that's the one game that they won against Las Vegas on the road. They are averaging 1.7 giveaways per game. That's tied 27th in the NFL. The Commanders are only giving up 0.5 giveaways, which is 3rd in the NFL. So they're not turning the football over. And points off turnover is something that also kills Carolina. Killed them last year as well. Their opponents have scored 51 points off turnovers. The Panthers have scored 9. So not any points so far this season have they gotten a fumble or an interception or whatever and taken that in for 6. Last week, had a great opportunity to take the lead, go up potentially 14-7 on Atlanta, had a holding call, had ended up kicking a field goal, and then you see later on in that game an interception when they're down 28-20, and the Falcons run it down their throat to go up 35-20 to salt that game away. And honestly, it should be 58-9. But Clark Phillips decided, actually, I don't need this pick 6. Let me fall down here and let's kneel at home and go home here in Atlanta. So, yeah, if they turn it over, that's typically cashed in to 7 points for the opponent.
Yeah, you know what, man? We're seeing this game very, very similarly because on the opposite side of things, the three things that the Washington Commanders have to do starts off with playing good defense against subpar competition. And again, that 9th rushing offense per play is very, very significant. And that is the part of this Carolina Panthers offense that clearly is not subpar. But when we talk about an overall offensive unit and overall team, that these are the games, if you want the Washington Commanders to continue being talked about as one of the better teams in the league or a good team in the league, and they're definitely not in like the Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens part of the conversation, but they're slowly kind of climbing up the ladder in NFL dignity. These are the games that you are expected to win. I mean, again, 8.5-point spread, bro. Like, you are supposed to win this kind of a game. And one of those ways you're going to win this game is by either stopping that 9th best rush offense per play or by forcing Dave Canales, like we just talked about, to turn to that 28th in pass yards per play passing offense with Andy Dalton. So play sound defense, play smart defense, play intelligently aggressive defense is the way that I've been describing it here in DC for the Washington Commanders. They certainly still, even with John Allen going on IR, Fenari Mathis, the young third-year defensive tackle, has been playing fairly well. Johnny Newton, the rookie out of Illinois, has shown some flashes, and certainly he's expected to do some things. Sheldon Day, the veteran, has been added to the active roster, so he's going to get some more rotation in there as well. And hopefully Dorrance Armstrong Jr., the defensive end they brought over from the Dallas Cowboys, is going to be able to come back because he has honestly been a critical part. Last week against Baltimore Ravens, the 4 series that Dorrance Armstrong was on the field for before he got injured, Derrick Henry only had 1 explosive run in those 4 drives. The 5 drives that came after he left the game, he had 3. So that's a very significant uptick in explosive runs. It's not only a Dorrance Armstrong thing, but there is a little bit of a Dorrance Armstrong connection to that whole situation as well. So that's number 1. Play good defense against what has been in totality subpar competition. Number 2, continue the blitz dominance. We kind of already talked about that a little bit, but Brian Robinson Jr. is another part of that as well. The better you can run the ball, the more you can hit play action, the more you can maybe get B-Rob going in the screen game a little bit, the better that it will impact a defense that likes to be aggressive and tries to get pressure, even if they don't necessarily always get it. Not sure Brian Robinson's going to come back. The team is definitely taking it easy on that. But I'll tell you right now, a lot of locker room conversations happened on Wednesday where it was, yeah, it's going to be great to get B-Rob back. Yeah, getting B-Rob back is really awesome. Over here, getting B-Rob back is going to be really fun this weekend. Kind of sounds like Brian Robinson's coming back this weekend. I mean, again, continue to keep your injury reports. But either way, even if it's just Jaden Daniels doing what he does against an aggressive defense, continue that type of dominance and then get takeaways. We just talked about the turnover battle, right? Get takeaways. Andy Dalton is 7th in turnover-worthy plays despite being 27th in dropbacks. He's played 5 games, started 4, and yet he is still 7th in turnover-worthy plays. The Washington Commanders have faced turnover-worthy plays this season. What they're not doing is turning them into turnovers. That's what you got to be able to do against the Carolina Panthers offense, because we've seen this dance in the NFL. Every year you see it at least a handful of times. A team that has no business beating one team comes in, that team that's supposed to dominate gives them opportunities, opens up that door, and that opponent will take that door. Don't forget, that's still an NFL team over there, so nobody should be sleeping on this competition.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game, and it looks like it's going to be a shootout, and I do wonder, like, if this Panthers offense, which, I mean, that's not about Andy Dalton, that is certainly an eye-opener hearing about that, but I just don't think that top-end talent offensively, they are equipped to win a shootout. Like, I like Deontay Johnson. I don't think he's as good as Terry McLaurin is, and, I mean, Jaden Daniels obviously has been outstanding, should score a lot of points. I saw the over-under went down from 52.5 to 51.5. That's surprising to me because I feel like the over should be hit on Sunday. Certainly Washington's team over. I would be betting on that on Sunday. Should be an entertaining game. And I'm very excited to see Frankie Louvu, how he's utilized in that Commanders defense now with Dan Quinn. I know he spoke glowingly about how he wished he had always been with Dan Quinn in his career. And, of course, Jeremy Chin as well, somebody who Ejiro Evero, the DC in Carolina, didn't really utilize at all last season after talking about he was going to put him close to the line of scrimmage as a playmaker. Now he's out there starting in Washington. Maybe he has something to prove on Sunday. And, you know, there's always here in Charlotte, before the Panthers were here, this used to be a Washington, then Redskins market. So there's still plenty of fans in the area, as this area's changed a lot, that have the Washington ties. And my dad's formerly a Redskins fan, a Washington fan. I don't think he really cares anymore now. I've been living in Charlotte for all these years, but still, there's always that element of this game. So it should be a fun game on Sunday, and we'll see if the Panthers can keep it closer than that 8.5-point spread.
Yeah, 100%. I'm actually, so this has nothing to do with the game, but I'm actually curious. Dan Quinn has been using game captains. There's no permanent captains on this team. And so
Okay.
far, there have been no doubles. But Frankie Louvu and Jeremy Chin have both been captains already. So I'm kind of curious to see, is there going to be a doubled up captain? Because, I mean, it seems like a prime opportunity to have Jeremy Chin and Frankie Louvu both be captains for this game. But we will see.
Both guys do an awesome job covering their respective teams. For more on Julian, check him out over at Locked On Panthers. More on David, check him out over at Locked On Commanders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Last of the 4 p.m. games here, the Los Angeles Rams. They're going to be taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders now minus Devontae Adams, and the Rams hoping to continue to get guys back from injury after, again, a really tough start injury-wise for them. So Doug McCain of Locked On Rams, plus your boy Q of Locked On Raiders, take you through each team's keys to victory and everything else that these teams need to do to get the job done on Sunday.
And welcome back to a crossover edition of Locked On Rams and Locked On Raiders. Here in our third segment, some more keys to the game. Q, what is your biggest key for the Raiders winning on Sunday?
Well, look, I look at it like this. I got 3 big things that I think that the Raiders have to do. I like to call these things non-negotiables that they have to do to have an opportunity to win this game on Sunday. And it's funny, usually I can really, get deep into the weeds and into the woods when it comes to all these different things, but the Raiders haven't been doing the basics very good. Right now, they lead the league in missed tackles. So the number one thing they have to do is they have to limit their missed tackles. They really do. They have to be sure tacklers. They did a really good job in the first half against Pittsburgh last week and not so much in the second half. They struggled in the second half, and, so that just kind of opened up the floodgates. And again, it was a 12-7 score at halftime, and it ends up being 32-13 when it's all said and done. So you can see that the wheels fell off coming up in the second half. So tackling is a must. They also must create a couple turnovers. Their offense is just not good enough. I would be lying to you if I said it was, and I'm not going to do that to you, right? The offense is not good enough to sustain drives up and down the field. I had it written down somewhere. Matter of fact, I think I have it over here somewhere. Where is it? Check this out real quick. First drive of the game against Pittsburgh, 10 plays, 70 yards, took 5 minutes off the clock, touchdown. Rest of the first half, 3 plays, 6 yards, punt. 3 plays, 9 yards, punt. 4 plays, 14 yards, fumble. 5 plays, 18 yards, halftime. They're not good enough to sustain drives consistently, right? They had 2 10-play drives the whole game last week against Pittsburgh. So they've got to have a couple short fields so they can go 5 or 6 plays, but get into the end zone. So it's going to be up to the defense to create a couple turnovers, get the ball to them in a favorable position, maybe even in plus territory, and be able to go and score like that and just take advantage of, like I said, a short field. So you got to tackle, you got to have the short tackling, you got to create a couple turnovers, and offensively, you've got to get the ball to the playmakers' hands, but you've got to have, some consistency when it comes to, Brock Bowers. And really, I guess I should take it back to, you got to establish some kind of run game. Like you mentioned, the Rams aren't good at stopping the run. The Raiders have only gone over 100 yards, one time this season? That was against, who was that against? That was, against Cleveland. They went for 152 yards against Cleveland. That's the only game. So they've got to get some kind of run game going. So tackle, create a couple turnovers, establish the run game, and see where they can go from there. But the offense has been on the struggle bus all season long. I'd like to see them get off that bus and show some kind of life and some consistency throughout the course of the game.
Yeah, I think on the takeover topic, the Rams bottom third in the league when it comes to takeaways, and this is a Raiders team. They have the most takeaways and the fewest takeaways. I mean, they have the most giveaways and the fewest takeaways in the NFL. They've taken the ball away just twice all season. That's the fewest in the league. Is also given away 12 times. That's more than every team in the National Football League. They have a -10 turnover differential, and that's 3 worse than any team in the NFL. So it's another thing, just like we're talking about the rushing topic. If you're not going to take away against the Raiders, who are you going to do it against? If you're not going to stop the rush against the Raiders, who are you going to do it against? I mean, this really should be the ultimate, okay, let's go in there at home at SoFi Stadium and win this game and try to make something of the season. Take it game by game and view this as, okay, win today, get healthy, just like that, try to get to 500 and make something of the season. Another thing we want to see is, look, Matthew Stafford, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Yes, he can still make all the throws. You see the arm talent, the big time throws. You see the arm angles doing what they do with Stafford. He can still make all the throws, but he's kind of going toward butter knives a little bit when it comes to the receiving core, the tight end that really hasn't played up to expectations. I think you need to see a signature Matthew Stafford performance like we saw last year after the bye week, where he really got things going. Him and Kyron Williams really led this team to the postseason, as well as a defense that stepped their way up. Man, I wish Aaron Donald would come back. Miss that guy so much. I mean, if you're watching this, AD, it's not too late, man. We need you back. But throughout his career, Matthew Stafford, he's balled out against the Raiders. I mean, throughout his career, I mean, small sample size, but still 2-1 against the Raiders throughout his career. I mean, he had 2 games with 390 plus passing yards, and the one game he lost, he had a 406-yard game with 3 touchdowns in 2019. So they need Matthew Stafford to come up big, make all the throws, limit the turnovers. I mean, against the Packers, you saw some pretty ugly interceptions by his standard. You saw a bad turnover by Kyron Williams as well. And then this is a team that is built to run the football. You bring in a Jonah Jackson, who you still haven't gotten the production from him. He's been injured with a shoulder injury, but you still have Kevin Dotson. You have a Bo Limmer, who is a young rookie at center. I mean, you just have to find a way to run the football against this Raiders team, and hopefully you find some way to salvage your season. I don't know if you throw out predictions on the crossover episode. I mean, you kind of wait for that, right?
No prediction.
I'm not going to throw out a prediction on you.
I have no idea what to expect. I would be lying to you if I told you what I have to expect. And it's funny, I've been doing this for a long time. I feel like I have a really good idea of who this Raiders team is each and every year. This year, the last handful of games, I really haven't had any idea what to expect game in and game out, which I hate that that's the case, but they have not established who their identity is, who they are as a team. So I really don't know like what they do really well as of yet. So it's like, I can't say, well, I know that they're going to run the rock really well, or they're going to pass the ball really well. Brock Bowers is going to go off. Like, I just don't know what to expect game in and game out. I hate that that's the case, but that's the case.
Yeah, no, that's the case for this side too. I mean, we kind of go into every week feeling somewhat optimistic, but I think that another thing you want to look at is, can this Rams defense finish? I mean, this team struggled to finish in the red zone, finish halves. I mean, everything you can look at, it's about finishing. And one thing you want to see on Sunday is you want to get home. The Rams are 5th in the National Football League in pressure rate, but they also have the 5th fewest sacks in the NFL. So you can apply that pressure. They're proving to do that with Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. They're the top 2 rookies when it comes to generating pressure, but you got to get home and get some sacks, and hopefully we see that on Sunday as well. So, yeah, I mean, look, this is a game where when the Raiders come to Los Angeles, let's be honest, it means something. It's special because this town has a lot of Raiders fans, lots of Rams fans as well. The fan base is continuing to grow, but, I mean, when the Cowboys, the 49ers, or any of these teams come to town, it's the Raiders that have the deepest roots in this town. So it definitely means something. And, you know, I'm reminded of the great Baker Mayfield moment. He hops off the plane and just beats the Raiders, right?
Yes,
in that down
I
season.
remember.
I mean, of course. I mean, so hopefully I'm hoping that beating the Raiders this year won't be one of the only Rams highlights for the 2024 season. Hopefully there's much more than that. But to sit here and say, oh, I'm fully confident the Rams are going to steamroll this Raiders team and get back on track, I'd be lying to you, right? So I am expecting this team with Sean McVay after a bye week to come out swinging and executing well. I think if Cooper Kupp does play, it will definitely bring a nice charge to this offense. And these rookies are only getting better. I do like the Rams to win this one. That's how I feel right now. I'll throw out the score prediction on Friday's show, but I got the Rams winning this one. But hey, to say I feel good about that, I'd be lying.
Yeah, I hear you. Believe me, I hear you. It's a tough call, man. I mean, neither one of these teams are stellar. They're not just lighting it up right now so far in the season. They both need a win. So, yeah, I'm just hoping that the Raiders go out there and put their best effort on the field. And if they do that and they play a pretty clean game, I feel confident that they can go and win a game. But like I said, when I went back to the keys to what I had, those are the non-negotiables that they have to have. If they do that, they give themselves a chance, and that's not guaranteeing a dub. But if they do the non-negotiables, at least I'll put them in a better position.
For sure. Real quick, I mean, I can't let you out of here without getting your take on Tom Brady getting that ownership stake. I mean, how do you feel good about that? I mean, do you want to see him starting on Sunday? I mean, just how do you feel about Brady joining that the Raiders Nation like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It really is, because he's a minority owner, and it's very rare that minority owners are celebrated like the Raiders are celebrating him, right? I mean, I was at the facility on Wednesday, and he arrived there on Wednesday, and I mean, the whole building had, everyone came out of their offices, and they all greeted him right there in the lobby, and he's on the microphone talking to everybody, and there's reports that he's going to have more than just a minority stake in the team, as far as he's going to have some kind of decision-making power, which is interesting because he's a minority owner. So I don't know what his role is going to be defined. I'm waiting to hear from somebody official that has the power to say what he's going to do or what he can't do. I also want to see how it works with his Fox broadcasting duties, because there's so many rules that he can't really do that broadcasting job the way that he should. And we're in the business. We know how much it takes as far as research and sitting down with coaches and players and going to the facility and observing practices. And if he can't do that, can he really do his job to the level of an A-list guy, which he's on the A team for Fox? So there's a lot that goes into that. I'm still kind of in the wait and see. I don't think it can hurt the organization that he's, a minority owner. I just don't know how much it's going to help the organization moving forward. So I'm kind of in a wait and see mode when it comes to Tom Brady as part owner of the Silver and Black.
Yeah, it's like something where you see it and you're kind of excited about. I mean, it's just kind of cool just in general. But then you read about he's not permitted to attend in-person or online broadcast production meetings. You might have access to team facilities, players or coaches. You can't publicly criticize officials. So it's going to be interesting to see how this affects his broadcasting duties, which he's still getting used to. I mean, guys like Collinsworth and all the broadcasters, they go to practice and they're talking to people. So it's really interesting to see that. But hey, look, man, you finally got a winning quarterback with the Raiders right now in Tom Brady. You got to feel good about that. So got to feel, but what is my take on that? The Tuck rule still pisses me off. Okay. And I would have to get him to say something about that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
apparently he has. Someone said that he's, I think Mark Davis said that he admitted that it was a fumble, but I mean, that's great. That's great now. And look, to be fair to him, it wasn't his fault the officials called it bad. I mean, it was a terrible call by the officials. But
just of all teams, that's the team that he ends up on. I mean, that really sparked the run, but still.
Check out Q over at Locked On Raiders. Check out Doug over at Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. 3 games in the primetime window, Sunday night, and then 2 Monday night games. We'll be diving into everything that those games entail coming up next year on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You're started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bets for the Ravens and Bucs game on Monday night. Ravens open up as 3.5-point road favorites. If you like the Ravens as the favorite in that game or the Bucs as the underdog, be sure to pick your side over on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Rounding out the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, I am Kevin Ostreicher, and we have 3 great primetime games to get to here. First, the New York Jets lose to the Buffalo Bills in primetime. Well, they get another primetime game this time around, and they have a new addition to their squad in Davante Adams, and he's expected to suit up on Sunday night against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who they already beat Davante Adams last week. Obviously, he didn't play, but the Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Raiders. Mike Tomlin said he was prepping for Davante Adams last week, prepping for him again this week. So you got John Butchko of Locked On Jets. You got Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers. They have everything you need to know about this game on Sunday night.
Back here on the Locked On Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network, Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers, John Butchko of Locked On Jets. All right, John, let's talk about some more specific matchups in this game. And I can't help but wonder where you think Davante Adams will be used in this offense, if he'll be ready right away. I keep seeing, because I keep posting it too, the picture of the wrestler who's in the wheelchair with the fake leg, and then all of a sudden the blanket comes off and the leg is obviously fake, and that's in a cast. Are you expecting something like that for Davante Adams, where he's ready to go Sunday night, no questions asked?
By all accounts, it sounds like he's playing. Jeff Ulbrich, the Jets interim head coach, said he's going to be in the lineup. So, yeah, it's amazing the healing power. Ironic how suddenly that hamstring injury is healthy now. I think he'll be ready to play. Now, he has missed time. So, we can speculate about how severe the hamstring injury was. It's been a couple weeks since he's played. So, I think there's a question of how many snaps he'll get. I think he'll be able to get into the lineup pretty quickly, because even though it's a new system, and even though Nathaniel Hackett's not the offensive coordinator anymore, he was demoted. This is a system that Nathaniel Hackett installed. They use the terminology Nathaniel Hackett uses, which is the system that Adams was part of in Green Bay. So I expect it. I don't think there are going to be any issues, getting him into the lineup. The question is how many snaps he'll go. He'll definitely play though, and I think he'll be Rodgers' look. I think when he's in there, he's going to be the guy Rodgers looks to.
The Steelers have been platooning against #1 wide receivers a lot this year because they're not trying to have Joey Porter travel all the time. They love for him to match up with certain guys, but they've largely just been like, hey, you know what? We're going to come out in our zone defense. We're going to attack. We're going to be aggressive. And it's worked for the most part. But I do think the Steelers need to be mindful of when and where Davante Adams is inserted into this offense, because you haven't seen it with him in it and with Aaron Rodgers, and that's just a unique challenge the Steelers are going to have to face in this game.
Yeah, as I mentioned, one of the issues with the Jets offense is that Rodgers is looking to get the ball out quickly, and maybe that's in some ways that's not an issue. Rodgers can make pre-snap reads better than any quarterback in the league.
Right.
So if he sees spots on that, you want to get it out. It is a bit of an issue because they've struggled to throw the ball down the field and make big plays in the passing game. But if you're going to play this style, you need guys who are quick separators. And prior to this trade, Garrett Wilson was the only Jets receiver who you could really count on to win at the line of scrimmage and get quick separation. Not really Alan Lazard's game, not really Mike Williams's game. Davante Adams is well known for his ability to win off the line of scrimmage, and
yes,
Rodgers knows there's not. I don't think there's gonna be much of an issue. I know they haven't played together in like 3 years, but I imagine it'll come back to them pretty quickly, where Rodgers will know exactly where he's going. Rodgers will trust him to win his matchups. So I do think Rodgers is going to look his way quite a bit in this game.
I think it would certainly behoove getting the superstar the ball in that situation. I want to ask you about this interior offensive line, or defensive front, mixing up my talking points here for the Jets, and how their run defense has worked this year, because last week the Steelers rushing offense took off. Najee Harris averaged over 7 yards per carry, and they had some success there. But is this a defense that you don't lose any sleep over stopping the run, or do you think that's also a problem that you think could rear its ugly head?
It's a huge problem. If you watch Monday Night Football, the Jets allowed the Bills to go down the play on the first drive. 8 plays, 7 of them were runs. Bills averaged about 6 yards per run on that series. They ran for 149 yards in the game. It's been an issue since week 1 when the Jets got chewed up by Jordan Mason in San Francisco. There have been moments where they've stopped the run okay. The second half against Tennessee in week 2, they did well. They did well against the Patriots. Week 3, the first half of week 4 against Denver, they did pretty well, but they've been very inconsistent. I mean, I think the New England game is the only game where they played a full 60 minutes stopping the run. It's been an issue. The interior defensive line has not been good for the Jets. As I said, Quinton Williams has been a star, who was a first-team All-Pro 2 years ago, a Pro Bowler last year. I've been making excuses for him. I've been saying on Locked On Jets, you know what, guys, Quinton is going to figure it out. We're 6 weeks in, and it's not just that he's underperforming. I hate to say he's been objectively bad this year. I don't know what the reason is. Like, you watch him, he's getting pushed around. Javon Kinlaw, who they signed from San Francisco, he's actually been decent as a pass rusher, but I mean, he just gets annihilated in the run game. Leki Fatu, a guy they signed from Arizona, he was supposed to be the big run stopping nose tackle. He started the season on IR, was activated last week. He wasn't the solution. And we talked about Will McDonald earlier, 7 sacks. Part of the issue with the Jets right now is that McDonald, with Reddick holding out, McDonald's really the only defensive end you can count on to generate a pass rush. So he's got to play a lot, but he's playing at like 235, 240. He can't hold up against the run. And that's one of the things that it's one of the trade-offs, is that in order to get that pass rushing productivity from McDonald, you're living with him not holding up against the run and him not being able to set the edge.
I think that's part of the challenge there for sure. I look at which team can establish their style of play sooner rather than later and get into the groove of things. I think the Steelers, they have a lot of changes they're still making. They're still figuring things out, but I think they're getting closer and closer to seeing what their final product will be when they figure it all out and have their offense ready to go. And this will be a big test. Like you said, yeah, they have their defense deficiencies on defense with the Jets, but at the same time, this is a talented defense that's gonna bring it. I think it's gonna be a really good matchup. I tend, John, I was asked by someone else this today. I haven't made my official prediction. I don't do that until Friday normally, but I tend to think this is going to be a very close contest in the low 20s of scoring, if that.
Last year, Robert Saleh, when he was the Jets head coach, made a statement that was mocked before the Jets Sunday night game in Las Vegas. He said, this game's a race to 20. And a lot of Jets fans were frustrated with Saleh because that kind of encapsulated his view that like offense was something to stay out of the way. And we could go into a lot of details on that. But This feels like a race to 20, this one to me.
Be sure to check out John over at Locked On Jets and Chris over at Locked On Steelers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Moving into the Monday night matchups, Baltimore Ravens traveled to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. Battle of MVP candidates in Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield. So James Yarko of Locked On Bucks and me, Kevin Oestreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens, have all the keys to victory you need to know and which team could come out on top.
Wrapping things up here on a crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Ravens and Locked On Bucks. And this crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Kevin, we have talked a lot about what the Bucks have to offer, what the Ravens have to offer, some of the shortcomings. What are the three things that Baltimore needs to do on Monday night in order to come away with their fifth straight win and really start to put a stranglehold on the AFC as a whole?
Yeah, it's been quite the turnaround for Baltimore since that 0-2 start. But I think the first thing that the Ravens have to do in this game, I would love it if they were to get off to a fast start against this Tampa team. Like you said, I expect a lot of points in this game both ways. And if the Ravens can get out to a 10-0, 14-3, let's just say something along those lines type of lead, that will let them play defense more freely. Maybe Tampa will have to abandon the run game at that point. We'll see, how that goes for them. But for the Ravens, they have proven that they can, playing with a lead in the fourth quarter gets a little bit dicey for them, at least over the course of this season. But at least for the first three quarters, they play with a lead pretty well. And then we've also seen, for example, that game against Cincinnati and even the game against Kansas City where they had to come from behind and were just a toe away from beating or tying Kansas City in that game. They've been able to come back in some of these games, but it does not hurt to have a fast start. And I think you can establish momentum in that game. And sometimes when you do that, a la what happened against Buffalo for Baltimore in week 4, Derrick Henry opens that up with an 87-yard touchdown. Sometimes you just don't look back after you were able to do that. I also think for the Ravens defensively, kind of like what we talked about in the first couple segments, Baltimore has to be able to shut down or at least slow down Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I don't think you're going to completely shut both guys down. They're going to get something somewhere with those guys. They're too talented not to. But if those guys are beating you over and over again, it opens up everything for Tampa Bay. I think they'll be able to run the football more effectively. Other targets will be able to get more because then you have to start shadowing guys over to those two players. So just like we've seen for the Ravens this season, star receivers will get theirs in some way, shape, or form. But can you limit it enough to where it doesn't feel as big of a threat and you feel comfortable maybe with some one-on-one coverages, maybe with just a little shadow here and there? If you have to start doubling guys or moving guys into that zone, Tampa could be able to feast off of that, especially with how Baker is slinging this football around. And then finally, just mistake-free football. One of the things that a lot of people have echoed this year in Baltimore is the Ravens' biggest opponent is themselves. They've beaten themselves in multiple times, almost lost games because of penalties or poor decision-making. John Harbaugh has been under fire a couple of times. And actually, I don't know if you saw James Mad Dog went on ESPN yesterday and was said, Tony Romo called him a top 10 coach on the CBS broadcast of all time. And Mad Dog was like, Harbaugh must have taken Romo out for dinner. Like that's ridiculous. Like all this stuff. He said Jeff Saturday was a better coach and was just going off on that. But Harbaugh's been awesome during his time in Baltimore. The issue with him over the last 5 or so years has been some of that decision making and some of the game awareness, where we know Harbaugh's record, but it was a pretty clean game from John Harbaugh in week 6, where first 5 weeks there was always something to talk about. If he can put together another clean game, no poor decisions, and that's all the coaching staff, not just Harbaugh, but coaching staff, players, everybody plays a clean game. I think that gives the Ravens the best shot to win because you are not just hurting yourself over and over in those situations.
Yeah, and on the Bucs side of things, look, they got to clog up those run lanes. They got to expose the secondary. And for the love of all things holy, protect Baker Mayfield. Look, clogging up the run lanes, Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey, Logan Hall, Levante David, KJ Britt, those guys have to be on top of things in this one. They have to stop Derrick Henry immediately before he gets to the second level. If Henry gets past that defensive line with a head of steam, those Bucs defensive backs are going to have a really, really bad night. Henry is going to bounce off of them like a grown man playing football against a peewee team. The Bucs defensive line is very different when they have Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey together. That became evident down the stretch last week against the New Orleans Saints, but it's a lot easier said than done to stop someone like Henry, but the Bucs absolutely cannot afford to let him dictate this game. As far as exposing the secondary, you talked about it. I've talked about it. It's no secret that the Ravens secondary outside of Marlon Humphrey this season has struggled a little bit, and that's real handy for a Bucs team that has Mike Evans that can get huge chunks in a hurry on the outside. Humphrey is going to have his hands full if he's lining up with Chris Godwin out of the slot, the league's leader in receptions, touchdowns, yards after catch, but he might be the only slot corner on the Buccaneers schedule that can actually slow Godwin down. So the issue there is if he's going to slow Godwin down, now Jalen McMillan has to step up. Sterling Shepard has to step up. Mike Evans has to be the first ballot Hall of Famer that he is and expose some of those weaknesses in the secondary in order to make sure that this Bucs offense can stay on the field, extend drives that end in scores, really chew up a lot of clock and be able to control things. And then, of course, speaking of Baker Mayfield, you have to keep him upright and so that he can find those guys down the field. There are some really good pass rushers on the Ravens defense, and the Bucs' entire starting offensive line has not been together since week 1 against the Commanders. Rookie center Graham Barton. I almost said Garrett Bowles. Rookie center Graham Barton was out last week with a hamstring issue. Again, we don't know if he's going to be available for this one. Hopefully he is, but Robert Hainsey played really well in his absence. But they have to protect Baker, allow those wide receivers to get through their routes and create those mismatches, allow that stuff to develop so that Baker can keep doing what he's done all year. If Mayfield has to start bailing and taking off to run, he does a pretty good job of sliding. But you and I both know the competitor that Baker is, and a couple of times he's going to lower that shoulder and he's going to try to fight for those extra yards. Don't even let him do it. Give him the clean pocket to work with. Let him pick apart a sometimes susceptible Ravens secondary. But Kevin, we're in for an exciting one, man. This is going to be a really, really fun game to watch. I'm glad it's in prime time. I'm glad these two teams are going to be under the big spotlight, especially with the way that Lamar and Baker have been playing this year.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I mean, and Lamar and Baker obviously have a history going back to both being drafted. Baker first overall, Lamar last pick of the first round in 2018. Both the guys have so much respect for each other. There are so many cool stories and everything. And then Baker honestly had a couple of fiery lines that people here in Baltimore still reference from back in the day. But it's cool to see those two every time they step on the field together. And while they're not going to be facing off one-on-one, Baker's not going to be trying to tackle Lamar out there. The quarterback
that would be ugly.
I don't know how that would go. I think I'd probably pick the Ravens if that were the case, but going to be a good game regardless.
Yeah, 100%. And just so that your listeners and viewers know, Baker's a little bit different of a guy than he was back in those Browns days. So maybe don't hold it against him too much, things that he said back then, but I digress.
For more on the Ravens, you can check me out over at Locked On Ravens. For more on the Bucs, go check James out over at Locked On Bucs, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The second matchup of the Monday night doubleheader is the Los Angeles Chargers and the Arizona Cardinals. David Drogemeyer of Locked On Chargers and Alex Clancy taking through the quarterback battle of Justin Herbert versus Kyler Murray and what each team needs to do to get a victory.
Paths to victory time here on Crossover Thursday. David Drogemeyer, one of the great duo over there, Locked On Chargers. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. For the Cardinals, this is a we don't know what the hell they are yet still scenario. Okay, off the heels of the comeback victory against the 49ers 2 weeks ago, they get absolutely embarrassed against the Packers. I'm going to go first because there's less margin for error for the Cardinals when it comes to paths to victory. Okay. Number one, and this isn't fair, but it's necessary at this point, Kyler Murray needs to be special. Kyler Murray has been one of the more polarizing characters over the season because we've seen the oh my God moments that I call them. We've seen them. We were reminded what he can do, and then we see a lot of mundane less than average football being played in key moments, and we just don't know which one's going to eat the other. So right now, Kyler Murray being special, and I'll add an addendum to it, is they need to run with him a little bit more. And that's the biggest thing for me, is keeping opposing defenses on their heels. And that's something that will immediately crack a game plan if they can't stop Kyler Murray. And he only has to run the ball 2 or 3 times. It doesn't have to be 10, 12 times. That's the biggest path to victory for me, for the Cardinals, is Kyler Murray needs to be special, especially with the state of the defense right now. What's the biggest path to victory for you with the Los Angeles Chargers?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one for me is contain Kyler Murray. I mean, it has to be. And I know it's like, well, hey, you want to get Kyler Murray running the ball? And, well, yeah, of course you do, because the guy's electric with the ball in his hands. Like, he's one of the fastest athletes on the football field anytime that he is on that football field. And he's got some shake and bake, and he can really make some things happen. And unfortunately for the Chargers, like, that game was 23-16 against the Broncos, but if you watched it, it was not anywhere close to that score. The Chargers dominated that game for the better part of 3 quarters. And the Denver Broncos did not score a single point until 10 minutes left in the football game. And that kind of coincided with Christian Fulton going out with injury, and also with Bo Nix running the ball a lot more and scrambling. And he had 6 scrambles for 61 yards in that game. And, well, guess what? Kyler Murray is way better at scrambling than Bo Nix is. He's a lot faster. He's a lot more electric and athletic, and the Chargers have to contain him. You have to make sure you are disciplined in your rush lanes, and you have to make sure and keep him in the pocket as much as possible. When he gets out on the numbers, he can make big plays in a flash, 20, 30, 40, 50 yards down the field, and you're chasing him, trying to figure out how to get him on the ground. And by that time, it's already over. So containing Kyler Murray, especially on the ground with the legs, keeping him in the pocket, staying disciplined in your rush lanes, is going to be uber important against a Lamar Jackson type of athlete with the legs.
Number 2 for me, conventional wisdom would lend one to think it's contain the duo pass rushers with some sort of chipping, 12, 13 personnel, whatever it is. For me, it's 10 plus targets for Trey McBride. With Marvin Harrison Jr. playing, with Marvin Harrison Jr. not playing, Trey McBride needs to be the number 1 target for Kyler Murray. Trey McBride is special. We saw it last week, 8 for 96, and it wasn't in garbage time. They weren't down 40, and he had 70 yards receiving in a game that didn't, at a point in the game that didn't matter. Trey McBride is special, okay? He no longer has to be that blocking tight end at times. When they drafted Tip Raymond, they have Isaiah Higgins. They've got guys who can do that for him in 12 or 13 personnel, where he can actually be a pass-catching tight end like a Jimmy Graham, as opposed to needing to be a George Kittle. And that's something to unlock this offense, irrespective of who is healthy and who isn't. If Trey McBride's healthy and Kyler Murray's healthy, that needs to be the one option out of the 1 and 1A option in the passing attack, because he can get in space, he can run over linebackers, he can run over safeties, he can run over corners, and he's got great hands, and he has a nose for the end zone. So that's number 2 for me.
Yeah, I mean, he's a dangerous weapon, and he is a big part of the offense. As you were talking about earlier, he is emerging as one of the better pass-catching tight ends in the league, and he has a lot of opportunity and a lot of targets out there, especially if Marvin Harrison Jr. is not able to go. He is going to be thrust into that spotlight, and it's going to be up to him to perform and go out there and make the most of those opportunities. For me, it's punish the Cardinals on the ground. You have to take advantage of that weakness. The Cardinals are giving up the 4th most rushing yards per game allowed, with 153 yards per game on average. The Chargers have averaged 120 plus rushing yards in the 3 games that they have won, and less than 70 in their 2 losses. So their ability to run the football effectively, it directly coincides with their ability to win football games. So last week, the game plan was throw the ball more. And I mean, it's a lot easier to do that when Patrick Surtain II goes out with an injury. But they saw some opportunities to be able to do that. And so if they're able to establish the line of scrimmage and run the ball effectively, that's going to set up that play action. And that's where Justin Herbert is going to be able to go to work in the passing game.
I'm sitting Saquon Barkley and starting J.K. Dobbins this week. Let's just put it that way. I mean, especially with Gus Edwards still out.
Yeah,
right?
He's on IR.
Oh, yes. And then you have Kamani Vidal, I believe his name is, who's the backup who scored a touchdown last week. The Alexa
on a wheel route. real nice play.
Like that's it. I mean, and the thing with that, and I'll put the icing on the cherry on top here, is the Cardinals have been terrible at time of possession, and that's something. The best way to keep Kyler Murray off the field is just run the hell out of the ball with, efficiently. So for the Cardinals, for the final one for me, and it's got to be on the defensive side of the ball, being opportunistic when Justin Herbert does throw the ball, take chances. It doesn't matter if they're big at this point. Like, the pass rush isn't there. Justin Herbert has been, surgical at times. He's also thrown some really bad balls that have been intercepted. So I think all of that culminating into one path to victory for the defensive side of the ball for the Cardinals is keep things in front of you, bend, don't break. And they did that really well against the 49ers between the 20s. Obviously, you're not playing soft. You're not giving up yardage, but it's a bend, don't break thing, especially with the state of their defense at this point. If they can turn Justin Herbert over once may be good enough to stay in this game, twice, definitely. I mean, we saw them turn the ball over 3 times with the 49ers. But this could get ugly very quickly as well. And I think that the Cardinals gave away the last matchup with the Chargers. They were up, I believe, 2 scores, and then the Chargers just came back in the fourth quarter and took care of business, got a dub at State Farm Stadium. The Cardinals need to win or get close to winning the time of possession battle is my last one. They just have to, or this is going to be more of a bloodbath than people think on paper.
Yeah, no question. I feel like this is a team with the Arizona Cardinals that does not want to play from behind. Like, they absolutely do not want to play from behind. And I mean, obviously that's easy to say. No team wants to play from behind, but I don't know if they have the firepower to be able to throw themselves back into the game if they do get majorly behind. And the one thing the Chargers did fantastically last week was dominate that time of possession against the Broncos. 37 minutes to almost 23 minutes of time of possession. They kept their opponent off the field, opposing offense on the field, and their defense as fresh as they possibly could. And speaking of that defense, it's the number 1 defense by points per game allowed in the NFL. So Jesse Minter it deserves all his flowers, all the credit in the world from turning around a defense that for the last 3.5 years were probably bottom 5 in the league to now being the number 1 defense in the NFL is pretty special. So we'll see what happens. We'll see which team of these 2 teams are going to be able to run the ball. I think that's going to be critical to the performance of each of these football teams and who's able to capitalize on a mistake on defense. And like you said, we know turnovers, when they are created, they are complete momentum shifters, and they could be the difference in a win and a loss.
Check out David over at Locked On Chargers. Check out Alex over at Locked On Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all I have here today, though, on the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Again, we are here for you each and every week, getting you ready for all of the NFL's action. Week 7 should be an incredible week of great football, tons of great matchups across the board. And again, you can check out all of our local experts on their respective shows, getting you ready for game day all across the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next week, we'll be right back here breaking down all of the Week 8 action. So be sure to stay tuned. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy football. We'll talk soon on the Ultimate NFL pregame show.